achieving the 5-star Doctor of Excellence in the 21st century. He's a graduate of the University of Ghana School of Medicine and Dentistry, finishing in 1986. Is that ancient? And then in January 1990, he went to the UK to pursue postgraduate studies, first in tuberculosis and chest diseases at the University of Wales College of Medicine, and then in public health at the University of London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Then he returned to Ghana in 1992 to work in different capacities in the Ministry of Health. He was the first program manager for the National Tuberculosis Control Program, and also one of the founding lecturers for the School of Public Health at the University of Ghana in Legon. He spent most of his professional career working for the World Health Organization Regional Office for Africa from 1996, where he served in various capacities. He was the regional advisor for tuberculosis and later on Buruli ulcer for 8 years, the WHO resident representative to a number of countries, namely Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, for a total of 13 years. During his career in WHO, he contributed to several WHO publications on tuberculosis and Buruli ulcer. He retired from WHO in 2017, and his last duty post was Malawi. He was included in the IBC list of 2,000 outstanding scientists of the 20th century by the International Biographical Council in the UK and was awarded a medal. He's a fellow of the Ghana College of Physicians and a member of many, many, many national and international associations. He's also an executive leader and business coach, a training and development management specialist for small, micro, and medium enterprises, SMME. He's also a member of the Coaches and Mentors of South Africa, COMENSA, as well as the African Board for Coaching, Consulting, and Coaching Psychology, which is also based in South Africa. And his hobbies include traveling, reading, writing, music, and playing golf. So he's an all-rounder. He's married and they have one grown-up daughter and a grandson. So what's he going to talk to us about? He says, traditional methodologies for training a medical practitioner has been geared towards producing an astute diagnostician and pharmacology-based therapist. So the foundation of medical education has been focused on the basic science of human biology, anatomy, biochemistry, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, etc., and clinical skills acquisition. The clinician that is produced is well equipped to provide optimum physical, mental, and social health care to his clients. However, while in practice, and especially in many developing countries, the average medical doctor or general practitioner is expected to perform other roles and functions for which he was not specifically trained during his medical training. And these include managerial, complex, multidisciplinary decision-making, leadership, and other roles. And so he often finds himself in a dilemma when confronted with such roles. So in his lecture, he's going to highlight this dilemma and propose a minimum set of competencies and skills that he thinks the average medical doctor would require to make him a 5-star Doctor of Excellence and thereby play such roles effectively and efficiently. In addition to the core care provider competencies that a doctor is expected to have. So he's going to give us food for thought, those of us in medical education, to consider in designing training programs to make our students fit for purpose. This fits in very much with the ACM philosophy. In this complex 21st century global environment, characterized by rapidly evolving technological innovations and scientifically proven non-pharmacological interventions. So his objectives are that at the end of this presentation, participants should be able to identify other relevant and important roles and functions apart from care provider that the medical doctor is expected to play within the wider health sector. The participants should be able to explain the concept of the 5-star doctor of excellence, and participants should be able to discuss additional competencies and skills required by the medical doctor to enable him perform these additional roles more effectively. And he will also enable participants to be able to analyze how these competencies can be incorporated into the medical education program. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my truly singular honor to invite Dr. EUGENE NYARKO to come and speak for us.
Thank you, Prof. It's indeed an honor to be right here before you, because I see you as the next generation of change agents in the health sector. And what a privilege to contribute in a way to how you shape the health agenda in our country and in the larger continent in the future. Thank you for this opportunity. As Prof rightly mentioned, the topic is training the 5-star Doctor of Excellence in the 21st century. And I was very pleased when I noted among the core values, one of them being to develop a 5-star health practitioner in this country. The 21st century has presented us with all kinds of challenges and all kinds of innovations. And as a result, we need to find the best way of riding with the innovations, but at the same time, contributing to the direction the innovation is carrying us to. And so this topic is meant to give us food for thought, but at the same time, to make us aware of what is happening around us and how the future is looking like. To begin with, I'm going to use this outline by first looking at the context. The context will look at the evolving healthcare landscape globally and in Africa, wherever. I think the changes are apparent in many places. And then we will look quickly at what traditional medical education offers us when we pass out finally from our medical schools. And when you get out there into the wider community, society also has certain expectations. So what are those expectations? And then we'll look further at the health system, because when you are in school, it is school. When you get out of school, you are in the work environment, and it has a totally different set of rules of operation. And that is where the expectations of the health system become important. And then we will quickly have a look at what the profile of the 5-star Doctor of Excellence is, and highlight some of the key competencies that will be required to fit into this 5-star doctor profile. And then a few thoughts on how conventional medical education can embrace some of these competencies that are needed to produce the 5-star Doctor of Excellence. That will be the outline I will use. But before we get in, I want us to do a little exercise. And that exercise will be to read 2 vignettes. The first one is this. I hope you can all read from the back. The vignettes, there are 2 of them, and they are true stories of people that I have encountered in my journey around the continent and the work I've been doing. The first one, I probably would want to leave you to read, and then we can move on to the next one. So let's spend a few minutes to do that. We'll move to the next one. Oh, you need a bit more time. Okay, let's get to the second one. That's a little longer, so this is just the first part. The second part. Okay. This is not a Viva question, so we're not going to answer. It is just to set you thinking about the challenges our various colleagues in the stories had, and what are some of the actions they took, the consequences that resulted, and how they handled them. And if there were anything they could have done better or differently from the kind of actions they took. As I said, these are true stories, and we're using them purely as vignettes to start this discussion on the 5-star Doctor of Excellence. So the next slide is going to look at the context of the evolving healthcare landscape. And I'll be doing that by identifying certain features that have characterized this evolving healthcare landscape I'm talking about. Those features are either setting the tone for the direction in which the healthcare industry will be moving in the coming years, or creating new platforms of how we operate. One of them is changing disease patterns. We will get into more details on that. The next one is cost of delivery of healthcare, and then the technology-driven healthcare. We have this daunting problem of disaster happening almost every year around the world, and its attendant emergency response measures. Then we will look at a holistic view of population health, the impact of what is known as social determinants of health, the maturing consumer expectations, and finally, the multiple actors and players in the healthcare landscape. So this will be some of the features we will be looking at. There could be more, but I think these ones are quite prominent and they characterize what is happening to the healthcare landscape right now. Now, on the issue of changing disease patterns, I think across the globe, we're seeing a gradual shift in disease patterns from the traditional communicable diseases to more chronic lifestyle-related conditions, the so-called non-communicable diseases. This is seen everywhere, even in Africa, where we think all our problems is communicable disease. It's not necessarily so. We have what epidemiologists will describe to us today as a double burden of disease, meaning that the communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases are gaining equal prominence. And soon, the projections are that the communicable diseases will outstrip the non-communicable diseases. So there's this shift. What it implies is that we're going to get more people coming down with chronic lifestyle-related conditions, requiring longer case management, whether in health facilities or at home, and therefore it will change the way the healthcare industry operates. But in addition, we are also seeing more mental health issues and stress-related issues. We may not be highlighting them as much as we do, but depression, which is one of the key mental health problems, is becoming a major epidemic across the globe. And then the next pattern we are seeing is more of violence-related injuries. Every now and then you hear of different forms of conflicts, whether it's civil conflict or armed conflict, whatever, even domestic conflict. And we're getting more violence-related injuries, including road traffic accidents. I think that is something that is very home to us. Just last week, we all witnesses to what has happened in some of the regions in the country about road traffic accidents. So this changing disease pattern calls upon us to begin to look at things a bit more differently in terms of how we handle them. And then the cost of delivery of healthcare. We all know healthcare is not cheap. When I was a kid and we used to have free health services, it was free to me and my parents, but somebody was paying, the government was paying, so it wasn't free. Today, it's even more challenging. And health financing has become a very complex issue. There is no one size fits all. And that is why in some places you will hear of, oh, this health service here is able to provide ABC, but this one cannot provide it, and there's quarreling here and there. No. It is because there is no one size fits all issue. No two countries can come and say, this is the only way we can address our health financing issue. But that is also defining how healthcare services are being financed now and in the future to come. Technology, one of the fastest running rates on the globe today. Telecommunication technology has changed so many things, including what is happening in the healthcare landscape. We know about telehealth, we know about telemedicine, there is even now telecare, using remote technology to take care of elderly people in their home environment, not necessarily bringing them to a facility. And that is becoming a whole new career. So technology is defining the way forward for us in many ways. And we need to be mindful of how that is changing the way we work. I mentioned the disaster issue, and it is here with us, especially with the climate change issues that are being highlighted. We're going to see more and more of natural disasters, but don't forget about the man-made disasters. They are also going to happen more and more. And disease outbreaks. Some of the diseases are diseases that in the past we did not even bother so much about them. A few years ago, Ebola changed the whole dynamics in West Africa and across the world. Today in DRC, Ebola is still gaining prominence there. Manufacturers of pharmaceuticals have to go on the drawing board to look at how they will address this in a very short time, to develop a vaccine, to develop drugs, and all of those things. These are all changing the landscape. Social determinants of health. Research has clearly demonstrated that a person's total health status is determined largely by factors that are completely outside the healthcare setting. Factors such as social factors, behavioral factors, economic factors, environmental factors, and so many others. And the contribution of what is determined by the traditional healthcare system is just about 20%. What happens in doctor's surgery constitutes just about 20% of an individual's total health status. Because you take this for example, the person comes to sit in front of you, you've diagnosed your malaria, you're going to treat malaria. That guy is going to go back to an environment which is breeding mosquitoes all the time. He's going to go back to an environment where food is scarce. He doesn't have the economic power to purchase food. He and his kids are eating 1 meal a day, and so their nutritional status is affecting them. He's going to go back into an environment where society is living in despair because nothing is happening for them. There are no jobs. That environment dictates a lot about how that person's health status becomes. So just treating the malaria does not remove the problem, because he goes back, he'll come back to you. Maybe next time it will not be malaria, it will be diarrhea, because out of their quest for food, they go and eat something that gives them that problem, and it keeps on them. So these determinants of social determinants of health are very important to look at if we are looking at health in the broader context. And then we have the so-called holistic view of population health. WHO, in their wisdom, defined health. I don't know how many of you remember that. Anyone can hazard a guess? What is health according to WHO? Okay, WHO says health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not only the absence of disease or disability. So that tells you that in the model of care, we should not be looking at disease per se. In the model of care, we should be looking at the totality of the being who sits in front of you. And so this concept of the whole person model of care has come to stay. That you need to address the person sitting in front of you, not only from his physical ailment or disability, but also from the mental environment as well as the social environment the person operates in. Because that also determines how he functions. And therefore, integration of the physical, mental, and social health is becoming more and more important. And that is why today you find that there are so many actors in the health landscape who are looking at different aspects. They are not doing exactly what we are doing as doctors, but they are doing other things related to health. Many years ago, consumers of health services, and by that I mean the patient, they will come and sit in front of you and tell you their problem. You ask them some questions, do a few things, and then you give them treatment to go home. They will not question you, why did you give me this treatment? But today it is different. Largely because technology has made information so easily and freely available. So our consumers are becoming more assertive. They read. So when they come in front of you, they have a whole lot of things behind them and they want to understand. It is not to challenge you, but it is to understand what is wrong with me and how can I do something about it. They are also becoming more conscious of quality of service. If someone comes to you and you don't treat the person that well, he will pack his bag and go to the next person who will treat him well. So they're looking for quality. And not just because I'm sick, I should go anywhere and get any service. That dynamic is also changing how we operate. And they tend to get more engaged in the care process because they want to take responsibility for their problems so they can help get over it. Yes, you may prescribe something, but that person wants to be part of how that thing works on him or her and gets him better. And they are literally expecting more value for money. A single cent must bring some value. So they would not just pay, knowing very well that healthcare services today are not cheap, they are not free. They pay for everything and they want the service to be optimal. So this is how our consumers are also evolving. Sometimes you might say they are too known because they are asking too many questions. But it's not just because they are too known, it's because they want to know, they want to understand. And we need to help them to understand. So don't flag their questions or anything like that as being too known. That era is gone. And today, in addition to the conventional health practitioners, we have so many others. The so-called complementary and alternative healthcare providers. They are all in the health arena doing something. And we can't ignore that. So this is how the landscape today is looking like. And that means we cannot continue doing things as before. We need to adapt our trade in a way that will make us more effective in responding to this complex environment we are working in. And therefore, I want to throw in this slide. It's actually an article published online in what is called Smithsonian.com. This came out in November 2018, where the British government has made a decision and pushing the health officials to look at ways of getting British doctors to prescribe art, music, dance, and singing lessons. we may say, how on earth? And what is that going to do? Don't forget, mental health is becoming a big issue. And as a result, the traditional methods we have, especially with the pushing down a pill down your throat, it's not the only thing that works. So there have been so many background research that has gone on, and I spoke to one of the ladies who has been incidentally an African, a Nigerian, but nationalized British, who has worked a lot on dementia. That was so because her father developed dementia. And the lessons she learned there, she's a teacher by profession, the lessons she learned there led her to create something called memory cafes. They are scattered across the UK now, and she's managed to put one in her native country, Nigeria, somewhere in Ibadan or so. The idea is to find other means of helping people with these conditions to function. So the memory cafes become a place where they can go and get engaged in all kinds of things that help them with memory. And she's right now doing a PhD evaluating the impact. That has already been evaluated and published, but she's evaluating along another line, telling us that this so-called social prescribing is a methodology that is being introduced as a complement to traditional healthcare. And the science behind it is being explored further to see how much it's able to contribute, and not the only solution, but how much it's able to contribute. So we've seen a whole range of interesting developments using technology and other things coming up. And this is a bold decision by the British government to get additional complementary methods to be introduced. So it's just a food for thought, but it's something that is currently going on. This was 2018, November. Now, coming back home, traditional medical education offers us fantastic training in the basic sciences, in our clinical skills, in public health, and all of that. And as a result, we are also coached to have sound professional decorum, especially for patient management, so-called bedside etiquette. And we end up becoming fantastic care providers. But as I said earlier on, once you get out there, the society you belong to or you work in have certain expectations. And it is those expectations I want us to explore a little more. Yes, they know you are a care provider, and they want that side of things to be handled efficiently for them. But they also would want to have somebody who can be a counselor to them, a health advisor, somebody they can go to when they have issues. And it could be at an individual level or even at a community level or at a family level. But they want to come to you for advice on health matters. And when it gets even to bigger platforms where development projects have to take place, sometimes they want to consult you, especially when it has to do with environmental impact assessments or sanitation issues. They want to understand from the health people, what is it that we can do to ensure we don't get any problem from this massive development projects coming up. These are but a few of some of the expectations that society in general might have. There might be others. So apart from society, we have the health system. When you get finally into it, Yes, technical proficiency is your bread and butter, and that they have an assurance that is guaranteed. And you must do so professionally. But when you are thrown into the lion's den, and sometimes when you are alone in the field, they would expect you to have skills that will enable you to lead the health team. That team can be a clinical care team, it could be a community health care team, or it could be a healthcare management team. But they want you to be able to lead a team and get the best out of it. They also expect that the various resources that have been placed under your watch should be managed well. Sometimes it's just the staff you work with. Or if you are working in a facility, the equipment and the rest, they expect that you will have the skills to manage these things, or even understand how they should be handled. And moving on further, they also expect that you will have skills to be able to collaborate effectively within the health sector or within your own institution with the different cadres that you work with, and also outside the health sector. Because sometimes some problems require that you engage people from other sectors to work with you. And so skills like negotiation become very key. And they would want you to be able to do that. Decision-making skills, sometimes we take it for granted, but it's not something that just comes by. So these are expectations that the health system that we operate in also have. And yet, if we look at how we have come out through our medical school training, it is not on every front we are well prepared. And so when we get into such situations, then we tend to shy away, or we tend to gravitate to our comfort zone, and our comfort zone is go and take care of the patient. And yet, what goes in to make that happen is part of taking care of that individual, and we must be equally interested. So now, having looked at these expectations, what is it that we're talking about the 5-star Doctor of Excellence? Putting it all together, being a care provider is a given, no questions about that. That is your core business. But in addition, you are expected to be a leader, a team leader. And leadership is not something that necessarily comes to you at birth. Leadership is something that must be learned. Leadership is primarily an issue to do with relationship. And so it is key. And because we work with people, we need to have the skills to be able to relate to them better. Communication. You need to be a communicator, and sometimes we take it for granted. But we will get more into these aspects to learn a little more about them. Decision maker. And then finally, a manager. So these are the 5 prongs of the star of becoming a 5-star Doctor of Excellence. To go into a little more detail, as a care provider, a 5-star doctor must be able to consider the patient, the whole person, that concept, the holistic appreciation of an individual. Not just as that individual, but someone coming from a family and coming from a community. All that impact on that person's health in one way or the other. And you must be able to provide a high quality of continuing care, right from the facility to the community. The second one, which is a leader, must be able to reconcile individual and community health requirements. And it must be somebody who can also motivate and influence, especially when it comes to behavior change, behavior actions that will bring about change. And you must also be proactive to take initiatives on behalf of the community you serve. Because sometimes the community might not know what to do, but you, knowing what is right, will be able to take certain initiatives on their behalf. Ultimately, you must be a role model in healthy lifestyles. And then, as an effective communicator, you must be able to establish good rapport. That is what we train to do. A patient comes to sit in front of you the first time, you must be able to gain that person's confidence so that you'll be able to assist the person. But you must also be in a position to promote healthy lifestyles through the way you engage the individual, communicating with that person. And then the next one, which is a decision maker, you must be in a position to be able to decide on which technologies will be appropriate, not just on an individual patient point of view, but even as a facility planning what to invest in, you must be able to help make that decision. And sometimes when community leaders approach you because they think, yes, we need a hospital, but we need so and so and so and so, you must be able to engage them and help them make a decision as to what is right for them. And then finally, as a manager, so many things sometimes fall under your watch, and you are expected to know how to handle them. We work with people. We have materials under our watch. Time is of essence. And sometimes we end up, like Dr. Elsie, having to manage even finances to ensure that the flow of the commodities for healthcare move. And you must be able to work with people in such a way that you can meet the goals of your facility or the organization. So these are some of the generic roles that these 5-star Doctor of Excellence is expected to have. But I want us to explore a little more about some of the key competencies with all this background, some of the key competencies that the 5-star doctor needs to have and operate within this evolving landscape. And the first one, I will mention it, but to rush through it because we know a lot about that. Our technical proficiency must be without question. But there are some other elements that we need to begin to pay attention to. And that has to do with the whole idea of being able to multitask and research. We need to demystify research to move it away from something that happens in big institutions to something we can do on a day-to-day basis to get results to improve the way we work. And that is the essence of research. It is not something very highfalutin in the sky. It is something that on a day-to-day basis we can apply and use to improve our work. The next competency is leadership. And I'm going to emphasize what I call the 3 I's of leadership. Leadership does not come necessarily by appointment. Leadership sometimes must be taken up actively. And when you are in that position, if you want certain changes to happen, you have to be intentional about how you're going to get a change. It will not just happen because you thought of it. It will not just happen because you wrote it down. Or it will not just happen because you even told somebody about it. You need to be intentional about it. You need to be proactive, to put down what you want to do, and prepare the ground to get there. Otherwise, it will just be an idea, it will just be a thought. And that is the intentionality of leadership. If you remember in the second vignette, Dr. Elsie was at a crossroads. She could have decided, forget about it, write to the officials to say, listen, send me back to the hospital, that is where I was comfortable. But she decided to give it a thought, and she decided to do something about it. And after that training, when she came back, she became very intentional. They defined the scope of work they want to do, they defined their goals, and they started putting in place measures to get to that goal. So she was very intentional about it. And therefore, she could even measure how far they were going and whether they were getting the right results. That is the intentionality of leadership. So don't leave things to chance, and don't think that other people will do it because you've talked to them about it.